You are listening to Hard House History with Paul Glazby.
Phil Reynolds, welcome to Hard House History, one of our most requested guests, finally here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, don't mention it. So, obviously, we were just having a little chat before we started, but let's just go back, because you were just saying about when you got your first set of decks, which is over 30 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess the history for me is that I've always been into music, sort of rock and pop music, I guess, as you know, most kids grow up listening to what their parents listen to, I guess. And then weirdly, during my teenage years, I kind of got into soul and R&B, which is quite
Right.
different to obviously what I play.
Yeah.
And then I went to art school, met some mates there. They were into kind of more clubbing stuff.
Mhm.
Went to a few kind of nightclubs. I guess back in those days, it was kind of more acid house stuff that was quite popular.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, I spent the whole of my teenage years running competitively. So going out, getting drunk and doing whatnot really wasn't kind of where I was in my life. And I was quite anti it, to be honest.
Mhm.
And then when I went to university, I went to university in Middlesbrough, so not a particularly big place, but they had really good nightclub on a Saturday night. But being Southern and being a student, I was too scared to go. So, um, yeah, this is one of those things where you get things in your head, don't you, about what you think could happen, but it never would, especially in a club environment. No one cares where you come from as long as you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
But by that point, I didn't really understand clubbing culture. Um, and then it was really weird because on our first year at university, that nightclub used to do a student night on a Tuesday night, and it was, you know, for the first year, it was typical kind of cheesy pop music and whatever. The second year, all the DJs that played on a Saturday night played on a Tuesday night for the student night. So it was rave night. So I used to go every single Tuesday night.
Mhm.
And that was kind of my real proper introduction into kind of clubbing culture and music.
Mhm.
And I guess the music was classed as kind of hardcore, but it's not, kind of like Prodigy sound, I guess. It's probably sort of
Mhm.
bleepy, acidy kind of sounds. Um,
Yeah.
and so I went religiously every single week. Used to take loads of acid. Let's have a great old time. And yeah, I mean, and then you know that music really stuck with me, and I think I found that it was the same people every single week in the same place, and there was a big kind of community, and I made loads of friends through it, and I absolutely loved it. So when I got back from uni in '93, um, I kind of started going clubbing quite a bit. So I'd go to the gallery at Turnmills,
Mhm.
where actually that's where I met Will Patterson, who obviously was, for anyone who doesn't know Will, he started Frantic with me,
Yeah.
and I also knew Ian Betts as well, who
Sorry, did you just say he started Frantic with you? So were you
yeah.
involved?
Yeah,
Oh,
from the
right. I never
start.
realized
So
that.
yeah, we can go into that in a minute.
Okay.
So yeah, so I used to go to Camden Market and buy loads of mixtapes because I live quite close to Camden. So every Saturday I'd go down and used to have those stalls that used to illegally record people DJing and then kind of sell their cassettes. So I used to buy kind of Paul Oakenfold, Sasha, Digweed, because I was kind of more into sort of progressive sound. Um, but then I found that half the music I really enjoyed, the other half I didn't. So, you know, when you're going back to the days of cassette, trying to whiz through songs you didn't like became really tedious. Um, and then I just thought, well, why don't I just buy some decks, you know, and then buy the music I like, even if I was terrible at mixing, I'll still be listening to music I really enjoy. So I was still living with my mum at that point, and so I think it was one February, I was just like, "You know what? I'm gonna spend all my money on decks. I won't go out for a month, but at least I can mess around with music." So that's basically what I'd done. So
How
spent
much
all my
acid were you
wages.
buying?
Not then. Um, yeah, so I just bought some decks, bought about 5 records, and then spent a month probably annoying the hell out of my mum just trying to mix the same 5 records together. And then, as most DJs back in the day, you got paid and you went record shopping and you bought more records, and then kind of, you then start to build your collection. And then I had a few mates who used to DJ in Turkey, and I had some other mates that used to do the odd night. And I think within sort of 6 months of having decks, I'd played on a BBC radio station, which was a bit weird because it's, you never know who's listening to it. It could be one person, it could be 1,000, you never know. And then I played in the club after about 6 months, and that was the Sound Shaft, which is next door to Heaven in London. And again, that was quite an experience of only ever mixing in my bedroom and then trying to mix in a club where it sounded completely different, and I had no idea whether it was good or not. And then nothing really happened again for about another 6 months. So going back to what I was saying about Will Patterson, we were mates, so we used to bump into each other all the time at the gallery, and then we kind of then sort of lost contact with each other. And I bumped into him about a year after I'd bought decks, just randomly in a pub in London. And then I went back to his house, and I actually had a tape on me at the time to say, "Oh, I've started mixing now. This is what the music is." And he really liked it. And then he said, "I'm thinking about doing a birthday party." And this is in August. I don't know what year it was now. Probably about 25 years ago, I guess. 26 years. I don't know what the birthday is now. And she said, "Yeah, so I want to do a birthday party, and do you want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And so there was 3 people's birthdays, and there was 3 of us that was DJing. So we had organised this party in Chinatown in London, and decided to call it Frantic. So it was just a birthday party. So 250 people turned up. Place was packed, and I'd never played in front of all my friends before ever, and so it was such a nerve-wracking experience. And I think you probably speak to most DJs when they play their first proper gig that they just shit themselves, and it's, you just don't look forward to it. And it was quite amusing because I was shaking so much, I had to kind of grab hold of one hand with the other hand to be able to put the needle down in the right place. And so it was crazy. When I think back to it, I mean, everyone else loved it. I hated it. I just didn't enjoy it. I think just the pressure and sort of not being super confident at that point of my mixing and not really understanding whether I was any good or not, I really didn't enjoy it. So then after that one, sort of me and Will sat down, and he said, that one, obviously 250 people turn up. Should we start doing it monthly? So we was like, well, let's give it a go. So that was in August, the first one. And then we've done parties every month up until December that year. And about 50 people turned up to each one. Like literally not many people turned up. And back in those days, you had Sunny Side Up, which is probably the biggest kind of promotion for that sort of music. And that was getting packed every week. And there were things like Sunflowers, and there was a few other promotions around that was still really, really busy. And the music we were playing was very similar to that. And we'd do all the things of flyering and, doing all the right things. But people just didn't turn up, and it was odd. And then we'd done a joint party with Spencer Freedom because he was doing a different promotion at the time, and he was doing quite well. So we done a joint party with them in early December, and I think we had John 00 Fleming playing. And this is back in the days where he'd taken a bit of a break from DJing because he had cancer, and he just started back again. So we managed to get him to play. And even then, it was probably about 100 people turned up, so it wasn't particularly busy. And then we'd done a party on Boxing Day, which used to be really busy back in the day, and no one turned up. And then Will sort of said to me, "Look, we're going to do a party in January. If that's not busy, then we have to end it because we can't keep losing money. I can't afford to keep doing it."
Yeah.
And then on that January, I got asked to play Escape from Samsara, which at that point in London for trance was one of the biggest clubs at the Fridge. So I said to Will, "Look, they've asked me to play first. Can I play first at Samsara and then come and play last at Frantic?" And he was like, "Okay, yeah, you can do that, it's fine." Because he kind of wasn't necessarily my manager at that point, but because of obviously being involved with Frantic, I wanted to make sure that he was okay with me doing it on the same night.
Yeah.
So I played at Samsara, turned up at Happy Jack's in London Bridge. Will was outside and he was stressing out, and I was like, "What are you stressing about?" He's like, "Too many people have turned up now." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He went, "Go inside there," and I walked in, there's like 500 people, and it was
Oh.
all Aussies, Kiwi, South Africans, not me English. It was weird, and yeah, it was absolutely packed. And then from each month from that point onwards, it just got bigger and bigger. So we outgrew the venue we were at. I think we got to about 600 people, and then we went to Bagleys, which is quite an iconic venue in London, and we was doing Friday nights there, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was kind of odd that we always felt we were doing the right thing, and we're doing all the hard work to get people in,
Mm.
but it was the Aussie, Kiwi, South African crowd that seemed to kinda jump onto that Frantic sound,
Mm.
and they're the ones that made it the success that it was, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So we've done a few parties at Camden Palace, but I mean, at Bagleys, but our main aim was really to get to Camden Palace or Coco,
Mm.
because I still consider it to be my favourite venue in the world to play at.
Right.
And so, yeah, our ultimate goal was, to get to Coco's or Camden. And then I think at Bagleys we had the record amount of people there's ever been on a Friday night at one point. I think the bouncers were taking money off people and just letting people go through. It was very dodgy at that point. Yeah. I mean, the setup at Bagleys was quite unreal, really, because the bouncers were notoriously bad at beating people up and stuff, and having in-house dealers and all sorts of stuff. And when you kinda get involved in a club and you're there setting up beforehand, you can see the club in daylight, and they used to have walkways across the dance floor. So what would happen was that the bouncers would walk along this walkway looking down over the dance floor, and they'd spot people dealing, and if it wasn't one of their in-house dealers, they'd radio, and it's bizarre because you could be standing next to someone on the dance floor, next thing you know, 6 bouncers come along, grab them, they're gone. And
Mm.
then usually they'd get beaten up outside.
Mm.
So, it was quite a notorious place. So, yeah, I think, a lot of the bouncers were probably taking cash in hand off people and letting them in. And,
Mm.
so, yeah, it kinda just grew and grew and grew, and then eventually we went to Camden Palace, and I'll never forget the first night we done it at Camden, and I remember at 6 o'clock in the morning when I finished my set and all the lights came on. Obviously,
Mm.
you played there before, so you know what it's like, and the DJ box was right at the back of the stage at that point, so it wasn't on the stage. So
Mm.
you see all these tiers of people, so there's about 5 tiers because it used to be an old theatre, um,
Mm.
and it was packed. There's people everywhere, and the lights came on, and both me and Will were like, "My God, this is the reason why we want to do it." It was like it was a proper special moment, all the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, and,
Yeah.
it was it was a journey, and, like I said, I think we were just lucky that the crowd, like the Aussies and the Antipodeans were the ones that seemed to jump onto it.
Mm.
Because I think without them, and we're talking, you know, late 90s, probably from about 98 to 2006, 2007 is probably like the golden era for clubbing, I guess, for most of us,
Yeah.
where and I say the golden era just because the fact that there were so many people going to clubs. I mean, you could have 3 or 4 promotions on the same night, even in one
Yeah.
place, and they'll all be busy.
Yeah.
And so, to be in the middle of all that was quite special. And, we're just discussing about Rewind, when I first came on. And so, talking to the people, last weekend, and for everyone, it's kinda like a time and a place where people didn't have too many cares, they just wanted to go out, enjoy themselves. Everyone created an atmosphere and it was almost like a tribal thing, I guess, isn't it? That clubs are very accepting for people. People just want to go out and enjoy themselves,
Yeah.
and obviously it's very different now. But to be in the middle of all that and being the center of what's going on, for me it was a very special time, and
Yeah.
create a lot of great memories from it and great friends.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. So those decks that you bought, did you go straight in with the 1210s or did you get some?
No. So they were meant to be direct drives, but they were somewhere in between sort of direct drives and belt-driven decks.
Oh.
And it's weird because no one taught me, because back in those days there wasn't like thousands of DJs around just gonna tell you how to do it. It wasn't YouTube,
Yeah.
there wasn't even internet at that point to even show you how to do it. So I didn't even have a clue about queuing up the first beat and all that kind of stuff. I used to put my finger on the record until they're kind of in time, so they would have been out of phase, they would have been all over the place. But back in those days, people didn't know anything about mixing. So,
Yeah.
as long as the music was all right, as long as it wasn't a train smash, that people
Yeah.
didn't really think about it. And so I learnt on those, and I guess you become an expert on it, same as with belt-driven decks. If you learn on belt-driven decks, you learn how to use them. My mates would come round with Technics and not have a clue how to use them.
Yeah.
And then weirdly, my house got burgled, and they took loads of CDs and odd bits and pieces, left the decks, but yeah,
Well, not taking that shit.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's odd but they took stuff that amounted to almost the exact amount of money that it would cost me to buy 1210s.
The old insurance claim. Love it.
Yeah, so because of all the stuff they took, the insurance claim came in, and I was able to buy 1210s. So that was it. Went
Nice.
straight out, bought them, tried to carry them home, which is quite funny because I weigh an absolute ton. Um, and then that was it. So then once I got those, it was a different story. It's like a Rolls Royce compared to a Kia, I guess, isn't it? With belt-driven decks compared to 1210s.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm kind of glad that I had that period where it was vinyl only, and it's completely different kind of process to it all, wasn't it? Going record shopping, and I used to consider myself a bit of a professional record shopper in a way that because I played sort of trance stuff and hard trance stuff. The European imports were always on a Wednesday, and then UK stuff came out on Friday. And I knew roughly what time I need to be at the record shops to cut when the record distribution companies would come in. And then years later, when I worked for Kinetic Records, I then realised that probably 90% of records aren't sold to DJs. They're sold to bedroom DJs and people who just want to collect stuff. So by me turning up at the right time, and the record companies would turn up. So basically what would happen is that they would come in with a whole load of new releases. The person in the record shop would play each one and say, right, I want 5 copies of that, 10 copies of that, whatever it was.
Yeah.
If you were there at the right time, you'd get all the stuff you liked, you could pick it up. But then majority of those other records could get bought by people who aren't DJing out. So every week I'd have records which no one else had. And when Binary Finally 1998 first came out, it came out on a label called Aquarius, and then was then licensed to Positiva. So what was meant to happen was that all the original pressings from Aquarius were meant to be recalled and gone back to the record distribution company. Unfortunately, some of those ended up in record shops, and I managed to pick it up. And so I'd heard that song at Global Gathering the week before about 4 or 5 times. Paul Van Dyke played it. First time I heard this song, I was like, "What the hell is this?" And then heard it about 4 other times that day. And then went into the record shop on a Wednesday, and it was there. And so I think me and Darren Pearce were the only 2 DJs in London that had Binary Finally for about a month. So
Right.
So for me, it was always about getting to the record shop at the right time, getting records which perhaps no one else would have. And then when I used to buy records, I used to kind of do the intro bit, go into the breakdown, and imagine what it would sound like at Camden Palace. And so that's kind of how I bought records. But also you had the community of people in record shops. You get to know the people at the record shops.
Yeah.
Steve Hill used to own Pure Groove, so it was good to catch up with him. I used to get the Chockies tunes a lot, and you then bump into your mates sometimes as well. So
Yeah.
the whole record shop thing became like a community type thing, and I used to really enjoy looking forward to going record shopping because you'd always bump into people you hadn't seen for a while.
Yeah.
And obviously that's all lost now because of the fact that we obviously buy digital music now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then also, you had the whole thing of white labels and getting hold of records which were on promo, which again people didn't have. So to be able to stand out as a DJ, you had much more opportunity back then. If you weren't producing records, you could still get records that people didn't have for a while.
Mm.
So to have stuff that makes you stand out from other people, I think that was the one thing for me that I really wanted to do. And so, that's why I took the record shopping thing really kind of seriously. I mean, it was fun at the same time, but I knew that if I was there at the right time and got hold of records, especially European import stuff, which a lot of people wouldn't get hold of, it just meant that when I was playing at Frantic, I wouldn't be the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the biggest issue that people have now, isn't it? That unless you're making music yourself or getting stuff sent from other people, your only songs that you've got access to are the same as everyone else has got.
Yeah. I wonder if there's like a primal kind of caveman sort of thing to that. Like when you'd be out trying to on the hunt and you bring home a kill, and then like, you go to the record shop and you find them gems that that there's hardly anyone else has got. Just maybe it's the same sort of satisfying the same thing in your brain that you've like gone out and hunted and killed.
Yeah, I mean, and then the flip side of that is when you go out and you go for a pile of 20 records and can't find a single thing you like, it's like the disappointment of coming back with nothing.
Yeah,
And,
that,
it's not like you'd go every single week and come back with a load of records. You wouldn't. It would just be, you might buy 2 or 3. But it was more interesting when in my earlier days, when I'd kind of go record shopping once a month, because then you might have £100 to spend on records, and you're really, really looking forward to it, and you go there and you can't find anything you like. So I think you probably put more pressure on myself. I was probably looking forward to it more, and then the disappointment was bigger if you didn't actually find things you liked. Or then you just buy stuff because you feel that you need to buy something, but actually you get it home. Yeah, you get home and go, I'm never going to play this. So you have a big old collection of records of stuff you're never going to play, which I then used to start giving to my mates who would learn to mix and didn't have many records. So I'll just give them a load of stuff, and they'll be very thankful. And then they get home and they ring me and go, "These records are shit." And I'm like, "Well, there was a reason why I gave them away."
But think of the poor fucker that made that track. They put the heart and soul into it and had it pressed, and it came out on a label, and then, he thought it was shit.
Well, I think knowing a lot more about kind of the scene and obviously getting involved in running labels and stuff like that, Alpha Magic were kind of the kings of knocking stuff out very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think they used to get Mick Creed to engineer for a day, and whatever happened in the day was what got released. And some of the stuff, the basis of it was really good, but it just felt like it was half a tune. It hadn't actually got finished off. And there seems to be a lot of that being released. I don't know whether Alpha Magic just want to pump out as much as they possibly could. But yeah, it's music's, I guess, is everyone likes different stuff, and it's very subjective. So me saying I think it's half a tune, some people might say it's great, but I just kind of felt that when you're writing a tune, you're never going to get it all done in a day. Sometimes you might get a lot of it done in a day, but you always want to go back the second day just to check to see whether everything's okay, and if there's other bits you want to add to it. So I'd usually say it normally takes 2 sessions to get a song done. So I just kind of felt that a lot of it was like, whatever got done in the day, that's it. And, if you think about the cost that it cost to print vinyl and go through all that mastering process and everything else, I'm surprised that well, I wasn't surprised that Alpha Magic went bust, but, you kinda think that if they'd taken a bit more time with it, then they could have released so much more better music.
It did seem like a strange business model. I remember I used to get like like the cardboard sleeve that'd be jam packed. Like, you wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
fit any more in, and then yeah, if you got one out of that pack, you might
yeah,
be lucky, and
yeah,
there'd be labels you just never heard of. Like
yeah,
yeah, it was a strange setup. Anyway, there's a couple of things you've said there that tie into something I wanted to ask you. So you said about the like the bootleg mixtapes, and
yeah,
also you mentioned Chocky.
yeah,
So I've got like a hazy memory of before I was even a DJ. Like it was late, just as I was learning. So it would have been '97, and there was definitely a tape, a Phil Reynolds tape, but someone had been down to London, a kid called Nigel that used to go down to Pure Groove, and come back
yeah.
with because Nigel was like the rich friend that we had, like, and he like, we would drive. I used to drive this Mark One Golf, and he was driving like a brand new Golf GTI, or he was just,
No,
like
no.
he was from this
Yeah,
rich family. So he used to go down to, Pure Groove, like, at least once a month, maybe every couple of weeks, and he'd come back. So I'd be learning to mix, like, as I was learning to mix, like, a lot of his, tunes, because he just used to bring his record box, and we'd all get stuck in. Anyway, he'd been down there, so when he was down, he used to get these tapes, and there was a Phil Reynolds one, and there was a Spencer Freeland one, and I can never remember which one it is, but would you have been a fan of the Chocky mix of Incisions, Beyond Motion?
yeah. I think I probably played that, to be honest.
Right, so it might have been your tape, but that's where I first heard
Yeah,
that song, and I never managed to get it on vinyl,
yeah,
which is that's I licensed it eventually, Vicious Circle 16, I think it was, something like
yeah,
that, just so that I could have the Chocky mix on vinyl because 'cause I'd never been able to find it.
yeah,
And then
yeah. No,
obviously me
because
and Paul James remixed it.
yeah, because I think I definitely had that, and I
Yeah.
think it probably was on Chocky's Tunes. I can't remember whether it was on his label. Um, but as
Yeah.
part of the Frantic promotion, we used to give out mixtapes. So
Right, okay.
me and Spencer would mix one once a month, and we'd give it out as part of the promotion. Um,
Right.
and I think it's also interesting that the names of DJs that appear on mixtapes on these stands, um,
Mm.
and I think I can't remember which promotion I played at. The rumor was that he used to record the sets and then flog them to
Right.
some dodgy dude in Camden or whatever. And I mean, I don't know how much money I used to make out of it, but I think back in those days, you're paying like £5 for a mixtape.
Yeah.
But there were lots of famous people, Carl Cox, all sorts of people, lots of like techno kind of dudes were, their tapes were on there as well.
Mm. Well, I know Dave the drummer, when he came on, he said that someone had given him a mixtape of his, and he's like, "That's not me." It said
Yeah,
Dave the drummer on the tape. He says, "That's not me." So,
yeah.
you just don't know what you're
But
buying, do you?
well, exactly, and you got no control over it. But um, like I say, it could be anyone mixing, really, couldn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly, yeah.
and if people didn't know exactly what your music was, they could get a complete wrong impression of what you play.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
why I
yeah,
was
so
asking because I thought I knew it was definitely you or Spencer Freeland, but I just thought if you said, "No, I would never have played that track," then I'm like, "Okay, well, it must have been Spencer." So the jury's still out whether it was you or him, I
yeah.
don't know. But yeah, you get that tape got me hooked on that track.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, so yeah, the tape thing was a really good promotional tool. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think, the people have still got some of those tapes kicking around. I think some of them even found their way onto SoundCloud or somewhere. Someone's put them up somewhere, but,
Ah, right,
it's,
right.
yeah, they're still floating around. But like I say, it's a good way to promote the club, and it was a good way to promote the music as well.
Well, that's how I got into Insomniacs. Like Tom from
Mm.
Insomniacs, I used to give him a tape every week, and then it kind of transitioned to CDs. In those early days, the
Yeah,
Insomniacs, when I was playing, I'd give out maybe 15, 20 CDs of like and I used to get, it wasn't just like a CD with Glazby scribbled on. I'd actually get
mm.
covers. I used to go to,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
what do you call it? We call it Office Works in Australia. It's the Staples. Staples, that's
Yeah,
the,
okay, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I used to the Staples
The
and get
stationery
the
place.
covers. and I'd spend all afternoon like with a fucking scalpel and a ruler cutting these things out and
Yeah.
folding them into things. So that I wanted it to look like something that you'd bought in a shop, like a HMV.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were quite
Yeah.
that good, but that was the idea.
Yeah, because all the tapes were printed on, and then we used to get all the flyers, similar type thing. I think, on a Wednesday night, we had a whole crew of people that would help with Frantic, and it would be like a conveyor belt of, like, people, like you say, getting scalpels and stuff, chopping up the flyers, and then doing it in a way so it looks like an actual proper tape sleeve, and you put that in and then put the tape in. So they looked really cool. And like I say, it wasn't just a tape with or a CD with your name scribbled on it. It would look like a professional kind of setup.
Yeah.
And, at least it makes it stand out, doesn't it? Instead of
Well, that's
somebody
right.
else just writing just a name on it and going, "What's that?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's been the one piece of advice. Whenever anyone over the years, if people have asked me, like how do you sort of get a foothold in, and I've always been just make sure you promote yourself properly. Don't just do the hat scribble thing on, because if it looks like shit, then people are going to assume it.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
all the perception. So going back to the tracks, obviously, like your sound and my sound are different. I can't imagine you played much of my stuff and vice versa. But one track that you did with Nick Sentin's, that instrumental,
Yeah.
amazing.
And the funny thing is that through Frantic, I ended up being on Nucleus's, DJ agency.
Yeah.
And so I went on tour with Nick when we first met to Australia, and so, I'd been badgering him for a long time about going into the studio together, and he kept kind of fobbing me off. At that point, I don't think he was too interested, and then we went on tour together, and he heard exactly what I was playing, and he kind of went, "Okay." But then I think Nucleus kind of put a bit of pressure on him to sort of say, "You need to work with him because, he's part of Nucleus now." So, I used to buy loads of sample CDs. So whereas you got sample packs now where you can download, I bought sample CDs, and I've still got a load here. And so whenever I went into the studio, I had, thousands of samples. And so when I went in with Nick, I had, 10 sample CDs. Nick had never seen a sample CD before, and he put it into the computer, and his eyes lit up, and he was like, "My God, I didn't even know you can get stuff like this." And he was like a kid. He was like a kid in the sweet shop then, and I had vinyls that I used to buy from Hard to Find Records that had loads of weird samples and vocals and all sorts of stuff on it. I think they were kind of classing them as DJ tools. But they were great for finding really weird, obscure stuff, for vocals and bits and pieces. And I think we kind of found quite a few bits for instrumental off, some of those vinyl. And so, yeah, Nick just had a field day because me walking in with, 10,000 samples just made it just made it a bit easier for him to kind of go, "Right, okay, let's go through that. Okay, fine." And it was I'd already been doing stuff with Steve Blake, and I'd been running Impact with him, and so kind of, even though I I didn't know exactly how to use the programs, I was kind of learning it and watching it and studying what they were doing. And, we're going back to the days where it was all outboard gear. I mean, me and Steve first started off using Cubase, and then eventually we go to Logic. Nick was on Logic. But it was still, Akai samplers, all outboard synths. There wasn't too much. I mean, Logic had some pretty decent onboard computers, but we're using Novation Supernova or Access Virus by that point. So a lot of it was still outboard gear. So I was kind of still trying to sort of learn stuff. But yeah, Nick was a genius in the studio. Just hearing things which I would never have heard before. And so having that opportunity to work with him, and then me walking in with 10,000 samples, it's just it it was amazing just to see him look so excited. And then we found all this stuff, and it was his style is completely different to everyone else's. And I think the way You know, you can meet, you know, a bit like Alf Bamford. There's certain people within the industry, probably like Paul Maddox and people like that, who are naturally gifted at doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Slightly nerdy, but you need to be, I think, to be able to do it because you really, your brain works in a certain way. A little bit eccentric because you've got that artistic thing about you, and being able to work with him was amazing. Um,
Mm.
and I learned so much from just watching him and how he can hear something and then just keeps tirelessly working and until it gets to the point where he's happy with it. And so, um, yeah, I remember finishing it, and me and Nick were like, "Yeah, I'm really happy with that." And then I think Ben Keane, BK, was next door, and we sort of played it to him. And first of all, he didn't seem to be that interested in it, and we were
Okay.
like, "Oh, maybe it's not that great." And then I can't remember at what point it was. He came back going, "I actually love it." And so, um, yeah, I think a lot of people would see that as possibly the biggest song I've done, because we
I mean,
also
certainly
did.
for me, yeah. I know you did others, yeah.
But I think, it was the crossover between Nick's sound
That's
and
what I
my
mean.
sound, and it kinda
Yeah.
worked really, really well.
Yeah. And then
Um,
the crossover, like, that I could play, it's something that I used to play a lot,
yeah.
so, yeah,
I mean
you
I mean, the
definitely
funny thing the funny thing is that I was resident at a hard house club and didn't play hard house. So,
yeah.
um, it, I know obviously I used to play last quite a bit before Andy became resident, and so I used to get the same comment from so many people, with people saying, "I don't like trance, but the stuff you play is really good." And I kinda go, "Well, you like trance then, don't you?" But I think because when we started doing Impact, it was kind of we kinda created a sound for it for ourselves, me and Steve, where it was kinda like hard house beats, percussion with rolling bass line, but then melodic stuff over the top.
Yeah.
Wasn't really people doing that before. You know,
No.
you had trance and you had, like, Euro trance with offbeat bass lines and stuff like that, but not not in the same way where it still had kind of that hard house energy, but more melodic. So
Yeah.
I think that crossover where it was still kind of banging and quick, um, that it still had kind of harder elements to it, but it was uplifting. So I think that's kind of how I managed to get away with being, a popular DJ in a hard house club, not playing hard house.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny though, isn't it? Like when Fergie came on, we were talking about how, like, and Amadeus as well from the Tidy Boys, and like Amadeus was saying that the the biggest sort of benefit, but also the biggest Achilles heel of hard house or hard dance, whatever you want to call it, is the how much variety there is within that
Yeah.
genre. Like you think like what Steve Thomas plays, if that's hard house, and then what you play comes under hard house, and then what I play comes under hard house, but you'd listen to me, you, or Steve Thomas play, and it's three completely different things.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and
it's
I
all under that umbrella.
when we were programming DJs for Frantic in the earlier days, um, you know, we used to have Steve Hill on at midnight because he played kind of a kind of cheeky, bouncy sound to himself, and he was perfect for playing midnight because people had kind of got into the club, and, you know, back in the day when the clubs were open at 10, they were packed by 12,
Yeah,
and so we would have John Langford and people like that who were playing kind of more kind of fun stuff, I guess. Um,
yeah,
and then you kind of progressively build it from that point onwards. And I think that at some point or another, it kind of progression of music within kind of hard house clubs lost its way. And I think, I don't know whether it was the fact that promoters tried to take advantage of trying to get DJs to play for free and, you know, all that kind of crap that went on. Um, and so these DJs had never played out before got a chance to play, and they're in front of a crowd, and I think they kinda wanted to prove to everyone that they could play, so they would just bang it out straight away, and they wouldn't think about the rest of the night because all they're thinking about is they've got an opportunity, so they just wanna play, and, it went from starting off at probably about 140, 145, and obviously ended up at 150 or whatever, it just started off at 150.
Yeah.
And I can't really put my finger on when that started happening. And the problem with that is that if you're playing 150 BPM from 10 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the morning, most people are dead by about 3. And
Yeah, and
so,
it's like trying to sprint a marathon, isn't it?
yeah, and so, the whole point of having a progression was that the music's good, but it's just different. So I used to have a whole section of warm-up stuff. So as I started to get more bookings and, I used to play at Sunday Central and sometimes, Sunday Central North and different places up north, I'd always play first or play early. So I had a whole warm-up section of songs which was slower, like Basic Graffiti type stuff,
Mm.
and stuff that I used to really enjoy, but never used to play that much because I was always playing later. So
Yeah.
I used to really enjoy doing earlier sets because it meant I played something different. But it's
Mm.
thinking about the night as a whole and not just about you. And I think sometimes that's kind of got lost in the, you know, over the years that, um, I think as club promoters, they try to book as many people as they can to get people through the door, and I kind of understand it from that point of view. But then, you're putting people that aren't very well known on first, but they're playing too fast, and then that
Yeah.
sets the tone. That sets the tone for the rest of the night because no one's going to slow it back down again. They're going to carry on where the other DJ sort of left off. So I think with Frantic, we used to always play people are going to play slower. So by about 2 o'clock, it was proper full on. But then you've only got 4 hours of it at 150 BPM or whatever. So
Yeah.
at the end of the night, the clubs were packed and people still going mad.
Mm.
Um, but then over the years, you got to the point where you got to 3 o'clock and the dance hall was dead, and people would
Yeah.
start going home from 4. So that final set that used to be the best set to play was almost like a graveyard shift.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I didn't really enjoy playing those sets anymore because people were just too tired. And, I think that's kind of carried on. And obviously now it's a bit different because most clubs are on during the day. So
Yeah.
that makes it slightly easier, and I think because it's during the day, people don't wanna walk into a club and it's 400 miles an hour when they first walk in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think as well, I don't know what it's like in London, but certainly up north, like the drug of choice change, so that late so
yeah, uh,
mid-90s through to probably 2000, 2001, it was all speed and ecstasy, and then
mm.
early 2000s, you started having GHB and ketamine, and that would have an effect as well.
Yeah, I don't think I think GHB was more of a northern thing than southern thing,
Probably.
but ketamine was a massive issue. I mean, I
Yeah.
we used to do an after party for Frantic called Provocation. It used to be weekly at the place called The Office in Rathbone Place in near Oxford Street, and I remember playing there, and it was like playing to a crowd of zombies.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought to myself, I could be playing Elvis Presley now, and no one would know. But it's like, and it was like you go to all this effort to work out what you want to play, and you put a lot of effort into it, and then you turn up, and literally everyone's all spaced out, and no one's really dancing. And from a DJ point of view, you kind of go, hang on, like what's going on here?
Yeah.
And it's almost like you get pissed off because you wanna put on a good show for people, but actually people are too zoned out to even know what you're doing, and
Yeah.
it became a real big problem.
Yeah. 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 Well, we've all grown up now.
But it's interesting now because I still play at Frantic, and so me and Trevor McLaughlin, we've been doing this promotion, all things trance, ATT, for quite some time now, and so whenever Frantic are on at Ministry of Sound, which is once or twice a year, we host one of the rooms. So it's interesting still being involved in sort of Frantic and seeing
Yeah.
how that's evolved as well because, um, a lot of people met 20 odd years ago, they had kids. They're now at their kids are now at that age where they're 18, 19, where all these people come back out again.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it's weird. It's like going to Frantic now, it's a bit like what it was 20 years ago. So all the old people have started coming back out again, It's all during the day, so you haven't got to stay up late. And the atmosphere is still really good. It's kind of going back to how it used to be. And
Yeah.
so it's odd how, I went through this period of where it was really, really good, and then ketamine came in and kind of killed the crowd a bit, and lots of people kind of disappeared. And even I took a few years out because I had a daughter and I wanted to spend some time looking after her. Um, and then now it seems to have got a renaissance period again now, where lots of people who used to go out all coming back out again now. I'm even being introduced to people's kids, which is kind of strange.
Well, that's I was just gonna say, when I do Insomniacs, I'll have someone will come up and they'll go, "Yo, do you remember me? Or this is my son." You know,
Yeah.
like, he's 22. I'm like, "Hi, mate. How you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird that, isn't it, like, when that
Yeah.
happens? And, but it's good to see people out. It's actually quite good to see some younger people out, because I think the issue with kinda hard house and the culture of what it was back in the late '90s, early 2000s is that, you know, we all kinda grew up with it, but
Mm.
then there was no kind of younger people coming in. And Tidy was slightly different. Every time I went to the Tidy weekend, there was a lot more of a younger crowd. But even so, it kinda got to a period where younger people weren't getting into it. And if I look at my daughter now, she's not really into that kind of music and the same kind of drug culture. People wanted to go out and get obliterated at weekends. Kids don't really do that anymore. So you had a big gap of, there wasn't, say, new blood coming into it. And I think,
Yeah.
the younger kids were getting into house, electro, techno, whatever. They weren't really into kind of fast, hard music.
Yeah.
So it's odd now that this renaissance has kind of come full circle, where the people who used to go out years ago are now coming back out again. And I think that, the day party concept has been brilliant, because
Mm.
we're all kind of not getting any younger. And actually, I enjoy my sleep, and it's actually quite good to go out and, enjoy yourself, get drunk, whatever, and then be home by midnight and sort of wake up next day feeling okay. Um,
Yeah.
and
Incredible.
so, yeah, I kind of class it as clubbing for old people,
Yeah.
because it is, because, you know, the thought of staying up till 6 o'clock in the morning would scare the life out of me now. Um,
Yeah.
and if you've got kids, it's easier to get a babysitter during the day than it is during the night. So there's
Yeah.
lots of advantages to it.
When
And
I
it's
came back
quite.
for Insomniacs last year. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, that's all right, Kevin.
I went back for Insomniacs, well, actually, the first time I went back, so not last year, the year before, and I said to my sister, she must have said to me, she went, "Oh, we'd love to come and see you, but, we just can't stay up that late anymore." I went, "You do realise I'm playing at 9 o'clock?" And she's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I just thought you'd be doing, like 4 till
yeah,
6." I went, "No, no, no, I'm playing 9 till 10:30 or whatever." And she's like, so then they came down and, had a good old time. But they were
yeah,
home and in bed before midnight.
yeah. And it's interesting, because I chat to my work colleagues about it, and they kinda go, "Oh, you're playing you're DJing during the day?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "How's that work?" I'm like, "Well, a nightclub?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they say, "You know how, you go out and dance and enjoy music and have a few drinks and enjoy yourself?" "Yeah." "It's exactly like that, but it's during the day." They went, "Is that weird?" I said, "No, because when you walk into a nightclub, it's dark anyway, so you've got
Yeah,
no idea whether it's light or dark outside." And I said, "And then you come out, it's 10 o'clock at night, and then you can go home, go to bed." And they went,
yeah.
"Wow, that's amazing." I said, "I know it is. That's why everyone does it
It almost
now."
begs the question, why did we not think of it 25 years ago?
Yeah, but it's odd, isn't it? Because now everyone's so used to, especially London, all the trance promotions now are all during the day, Frantic during the day. Everyone seems to have kind of jumped onto this day party thing, because they realise that the people they want to come to the club aren't interested in staying up late. You
Yeah,
know, they've kind of done all that when they're young, in their youth, and kind of then have careers and do normal stuff. And then now, like I say, I don't want to stay up late.
yeah,
And I spent years and years and years doing it, and I definitely don't want to do it now. You know, we all had lots of fun doing it years ago, but actually, life moves on, doesn't it? You've got responsibilities and other bits and pieces. So, um, yeah, that concept, I think, is the reasons why there's lots of older people coming back out again now.
yeah, yeah. But it must be funny for your scene because like you said, Frantic, in the early days at least, was predominantly the Aussies and the Kiwis and the South Africans, but I would imagine a lot of those people have gone home.
Yeah, I mean, obviously people's working visas only last so long, and then they have to go back. And this is kind of the concept why Rewind sort of got together, is that there's a lot of people in that time and place where they were all Aussies and Kiwis, South Africans, and now Frantic's predominantly all English people, just because they've all gone home.
Yeah.
And there was within the music scene, there was always a lot of English people there, but it just seemed to be Frantic had a lot more Australians and Kiwis there.
Yeah.
And so, Frantic's still selling out, and, probably sold over 1,000 tickets, or I don't know what the capacity is at Ministry, 1,200 people. And they do Cocos once a year. So there's like 4 Frantic parties a year, and they're all selling out, and they're still doing really well. So, it's been great to see that it's still going.
Mm.
And
Will's not involved anymore, is he?
No, I think the last time I spoke to Will, he was events promoter for a venue called E1 in East London. I'm not sure if he's still doing that at all, but I think for Will, it took up so much of his time, and blood, sweat, and tears trying to get that club to kind of get to where it was, and then he was managing the Nucleus DJ agency as well, so he had lots of stuff going on, and I think that he had some business interest in the Channel Club when Frantic bought it. So he had lots of things going on, and I think eventually it just was knackered, and then Simon Gordon was kind of helping out, and then he became the natural successor of taking it on. And Simon's done a great job with it, really good job with it, because times move on, music moves on, and so Frantic now has kind of got a blend between some really good trance artists, as well as kind of the favoured hard house, Lisa Pinup, Lisa Lashes, people like yourself, but as well as like the likes of John Askew, Will Rees, people like that who are now kind of popping the trance scene. So I think Simon's done a really good job of sort of moulding it together to be a kind of more modern version of what Frantic was. And I think that's really difficult to be able to do that, because you're trying to please a lot of people. And I think with Ministry, how it normally works is you've got hard house in the main room, and then the trance in the bar 103 room, and that seems to work really well. Because predominantly a lot of the Frantic crowd, especially the older crowd, are kind of more into their sort of old school hard house, really. But there are now newer people who kind of like their trance as well, because there was a period in time where there wasn't much going on in London with regards to kind of hard house events. Frantic had kind of stopped. Tidy weren't really doing anything in London. A lot of the other promotions sort of stopped, and I think that's to do with some of the things we talked about, where people are getting older, but then ketamine sort of destroyed the scene a bit, and so people kind of stopped going out, and so promotion stopped because there wasn't an audience for it. So it's kind of odd now that there's quite a lot going on, or there's more stuff going on, and it seems to be selling out. And the atmosphere of Frantic's brilliant; it's really good. So it's good that it's kind of coming back. And obviously, you've got things like Insomniacs now up north doing quite a lot of parties. But I mean, there's still people moaning that there's too much going on at times where you can't get to everywhere. And it's like, but that's kind of what you want it to be, though, isn't it? If you want, if you want to get back to how it at some point where it was before, and it's never going to be quite the same as it was back in early 2000s, but if there's a lot more promotions going on and more people going out, surely it's got to be better for the scene, and when you've got a promotion in Sheffield and a promotion in London at the same time, it's not really going to affect it. People sort of say, well, there's 2 promotions going on, but I always tend to find that Frantic in London had its own kind of crowd, and then you look at Sun Essential had their own crowd, and Insomniacs had their crowd because of where they were situated. That there would be some crossover, but if I went to Sun Essential North, other than some of the other DJs, there wouldn't be that many people that I knew. It's completely different. So
I mean, we'll drive for 4 or 5 hours, but we're getting paid hundreds of pounds. That's why.
yeah, exactly.
You're going for a night out, you may as well go local.
Of course you will, unless it was Paul Van Dyke or Cole Cox or some massive person
Yeah.
you don't get to see very often, then you'd do that. But it might be a festival,
Yeah.
God's Kitchen or something like that, which people would travel for. But
Yeah.
there's still stuff going on at Colville. It's good that the scene is still there. And there's, like I say, there's a whole renaissance of older people coming back out again now. So at the moment, I think it's in a good place.
Yeah.
Probably
And
better
as well, I
weather.
mean, sorry, go on.
Probably better, but it's probably better than it has been for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, it was just completely by accident. Like I started this. I mean, this podcast wasn't Hard House History when I started it, but I didn't even realize that the scene was even back. It was only through bringing people like Maddox and Ben Stevens, and then Lisa Lashes and Steve Hill, and they were saying, "Oh no, like the scene's kind of regenerating." I'm like, "Oh shit,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool."
Yes. Yes. But it's bizarre because for quite some time, it was almost like I was kind of ready to sail off into the sunset and kind of go, "Well, I've had my fun doing it and achieved
Yeah,
more than I ever thought I would do." And
yeah,
so I wasn't that worried about it. And now I'm like, "Well, I'm really enjoying it again." It's
yeah.
good to kinda
Well,
go
that's it.
back
Like,
out.
yeah, and that's where I'm at. Like, making tracks again and getting involved with the label and DJing. Yeah, like I mean, obviously being over here, there's only so much I can do. I think I've got maybe 6 or 7 gigs this year, but I'm kind of limited. Like when I can only
Yeah,
go back to England, I'm going back to England twice this year. And then I've got Brisbane and New Zealand, and what else have I got? So yeah, anyway, I can't remember, but yeah, like when you're in Australia, and that's why because I was talking to the guys when I was in, um, Terry Blunt
yeah,
and,
okay, yeah, yeah, high
and,
dosage. Yeah,
yeah, Ryan, it is.
yeah,
Yeah, and Ryan, and they were
yeah,
saying about how hard it is being, like a hard house artist, but being in New Zealand because 'cause you're so far away from
yeah,
anywhere. Even to get a gig in Australia, you've got to fly, like there's
yeah,
so, I kinda understand what they're saying because being in England where we had, we could do 3, 4 gigs in a night
yeah.
if we really wanted to, like you would and there's nowhere else in the world really that you could have that,
No,
like the
and
concentration of
yeah, because, we tried to get Frantic off the ground on Australia because
yeah,
probably early 2000, maybe 2004, maybe, that a lot of the Australians that had been in London already had to go home because they had a 2-year working visa. So,
mm,
there was loads of people in Australia who kind of wanted to still go out. So, it was odd to come into Australia. So, I came to Australia 8 times in 1 year, and, like,
wow,
for 7 of those, I came for the weekend. So, we're doing Frantics every 6 weeks in Melbourne and Sydney. And so, you get to know all the other people involved in the music scene in Australia, and you kinda get to understand musically what is popular in Australia and what isn't. Um, and so, Brisbane had System 6 that was kinda really hard house. You had Adelaide that had a really good hard house scene.
mhm,
But then Melbourne and Sydney were more hardstyle. Um, and so, for us trying to, you know, recreate Frantic in Melbourne and Sydney, it worked for a little while, but the problem is that it was all ex-London people. You weren't really getting many people from Australia, never been to London, coming to those events because 'cause they're just not really into that music.
yeah, yeah,
And we tried for a few years to kinda get it to work, and Frantic still does the odd boat party in Sydney, um,
mm,
but the following just got smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where there was no point kind of carrying on. And, I bumped into the guy who runs System 6 at Rewind last week, and we were talking about it, and he sort of said, they're having a bit of a renaissance of trying to getting people back out again now. So we had this kinda similar kind of conversation. Um, but yeah, Australia always had a good hard house scene, but like
mm,
you say, it was only kind of really Brisbane and Adelaide that really were into it. Um,
yeah,
and, you wouldn't have, it's not like England, you would have 3 or 4 parties on a weekend. You might have 1 a month or 2 a month. It wasn't like a weekly event.
no,
So, if you're playing that style of music in Australia, you're very limited to where you can play, and obviously in New Zealand, again, New Zealand used to have a much bigger scene. Auckland had a great scene back in the day, but again, like I
Yeah.
say, I think it's similar to the UK. People get older, people stop going out, people move on to different types of music, and there's not lots of people coming through who are younger into that music because house and techno and other bits and pieces of kind of drum and bass has got big in various places that you know younger kids kind of into that sound.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of died off a bit. And I mean, there's still stuff going on in New Zealand, but nowhere near as much as there used to be. And I guess it's the same with Australia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just I guess the geography of it is just doesn't lend itself. Like sort of going back to England, like if you if there's a night that you normally go to in Leeds, but then it stops for whatever reason, you can always go to Sheffield or Manchester. It's like literally less than an hour to get there, so it's like no big deal. Whereas if you're in Brisbane and the night that you go to stops, and then your alternative is Melbourne or Adelaide, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we're gonna fly. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's just can't do it.
yeah.
Yeah. So what's next? You got anything lined up?
Well, it's kind of weird because I don't tend to play out so much these days. Just more the fact that I haven't really pushed myself, to be honest. I think I had a period where I kind of wasn't super interested in playing out. I kind of enjoyed doing the odd gig. I think now I'm kind of getting back into it where I'd like to play out a bit more. But I've been doing a lot more music production. I think since lockdown, where I had a lot of time on my hands, I'd done loads of tutorials and stuff. So I never had an issue with writing stuff, but the engineering side of it, I always found difficult. And I think it's one of those things where you kind of have a bit of a imposter syndrome where you kind of feel that you listen to other people's tracks and then you try to write a track and engineer it, that my engineering side of it wasn't up to scratch. And so during lockdown, I'd done loads of tutorials, learned loads of stuff. And I think since that point, it's just been a never ending kind of learning curve of engineering side of stuff. So I've written 3 albums now. And I'm just finishing doing a 4th now. So, and also not it's a typical kind of style of what people would expect, but I've also been writing kind of different stuff as well. So I'm now currently doing progressive house, drum and bass, trance, a bit of side trance stuff. So I've got an alias called Vanderpole, which I released an album where it was kind of a mismatch of kind of techno, house, trance, progressive, just trying to do something a little bit different. I think it was so different that I'm not sure whether people quite understood what it was. And so I think musically just wanted to branch out a bit. So currently I've got this full Phil Reynolds album, which I'm finishing off. I'm also working on this Vanderpole stuff, which is now more house and progressive. But just really enjoying the process of writing music now. I think getting to that point, I'm kind of learning how to master, so I've got full control over what I'm doing. And I think I've always been one of those people who's kind of enjoyed learning stuff. But it's also getting to the point of not relying on other people. And I think when you first get into writing music, that's the hardest part, isn't it? It's like you're kind of trying to get your ideas across, but you don't really know how to articulate it. And because you can't use the program, it's quite frustrating. So you're relying on someone else. And it's one of those things that just takes a very long time to learn.
Yeah.
And I think the issue that we have currently with kind of social media and everything else that you see on it, people want success too quickly. They don't want to do the work, they want to come across as being a successful, brilliant producer, but actually they don't do anything, or they're not even willing to learn. So I I think, the people who've been around for a long time and still around are the people who've learned the hard way of how to do it. And, it does take a long time. It's not something that can happen overnight. There's one thing writing songs and be able to write decent songs. The next part is actually making it sound good. Because if it sounds crap and you play it out and it sounds rubbish compared to everything else, a lot of DJs won't play it because it's not up to scratch compared to other
Yeah.
stuff. And this is where I had that kind of imposter syndrome thing where I always felt that my stuff that I'd done wasn't quite up to scratch, but it's starting to get there now. So,
Okay.
so a lot of music production stuff. Um, and yeah, just want to sort of start getting out there a bit more and playing a bit more. Because I tend to do a lot of the Frantic stuff and ATT, and there's a few other odd bits and pieces coming up. Obviously, I've just done Rewind in Brisbane and maybe go back to there next year.
Yep.
But yeah, much more focused on music production more than DJing now.
Right. Nice. And you got how old's your daughter now?
14.
14. Right.
Yeah.
And you got a birthday coming up, I believe, Phil.
Yeah, on Thursday.
Happy
Ripe
birthday.
old age of 54.
54. Look at that. And we've
Yeah.
both still got his hair.
Yeah. That's one thing. I've still got plenty of hair left. That's good. But when you look back at your life and kind of look at all the stuff that I've gone through and all the mad experiences from DJing and going overseas and meeting people, because it was something that I never aspired to when I was a teenager. Kind of, I guess in some respects, happened by accident. It's been a bit of a mad journey, and so I kind of look back proud at the achievements that I've done, and I've managed to travel to places I never thought that I'd ever would do. Um, so I guess in some respects, I don't feel I need to prove anything to anyone anymore, and I'm quite happy where I am, which is probably why I'm more focused on writing music now than DJing.
Yeah.
Um,
But
because
what you'll probably find is that the music production is gonna then lead to more
yeah,
gigs. And do you know what I
yeah.
mean? That's just the natural progression, yeah.
Yeah, and, I think, everyone starts off normally the progression is you start off as a DJ and then you're playing lots of other people's music, but then at some point or another, you wanna be able to do it yourself, and then now I've got to the point where I wanna engineer it myself, I wanna master it myself, just that I've got full control over it, and then it's quite nice to wake up one day and go, "Right, I'm gonna switch the studio on and just write something." And then kind of being able to write different styles of music really helps as well, because I think when you're writing albums, you can get so far into an album and then you kind of run out of ideas and you're trying to make songs sound different. And it's interesting when you listen to rock bands and pop bands and listen to full albums that a lot of the stuff sounds the same because it's the same people doing it, and you will get standout tracks on there. And I think as you kind of get towards the end of an album, it's quite hard to kind of create song after song after song and it all being really, really great because you probably used up a lot of your creativeness already doing it. So by doing other styles of music, I can then sort of stop doing one thing and doing something else, and my brain sort of gets into a different place.
Well, it's like a palate cleanser, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's important. One thing I'd say to new producers trying to get into it is, allow yourself some breaks from writing stuff because um, when I remember I think doing Frantic December last year, I had loads of new music which I was trying to do for this album, and I really kind of pushed myself to try and get a lot of it all finished to be able to play, and I just burnt myself out, and it was just too much. And I've taken about 2 months off from writing anything just to kind of get myself out of a kind of musical hole where I just got writer's block.
Yeah.
And also my brain was just fried from trying to do too much. I mean, I don't know how people like Alf and people who do it all the time, day in, day out can do it. I mean, I can't. I think I just run out of ideas after a while. And
Well,
I think
Alf said that. Sorry.
I was about to say, it's good to write stuff and then leave it for a while and then go back to it. And then you can kind of spot some of the mistakes that you've got and whether you're happy with it. Because I think people are in too much of a rush to try and get things finished, especially when you're new to it. You just want people to listen to it. But then sometimes it's good to have a break and then come back to it. Because, like I say, I had a few months off, and I kind of got back into the studio yesterday for the first time. And other than doing some bootleg stuff to write some original stuff, and I was really kind of back on it yesterday and really kind of enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, when Alf came on, he was saying that his because he does a lot of engineering for other people, so he can kind of like disconnect and just do the work and not have to feel like because he doesn't care. He doesn't have to like it at the end.
Yeah.
But then when he sits and has to do his own stuff, that's when he'll get a block because he's invested in it.
Yeah. And I think when you're doing it every single day, you're not doing it every day, but if you're doing it 3 or 4 days a week, I think it is quite difficult. And trying to fit it in around, full-time work, having a child, I do quite a lot of exercise, and then trying to do music as well. I think I kind of found that I was trying to fit too much into the day, and then working on music stuff until 11 o'clock at night, and then trying to go to bed, and my brain's still kind of in that, I need to do this, need to do that, thinking about what you're doing with your track, and then not sleeping particularly well. I think you can kind of fall into that trap where you're trying to take too much on. So it was quite nice to have that break and let my brain reset a bit. And then, going to Rewind, it was such a great weekend, and it really sort of inspired me to kind of want to get back into writing music again. So I think you shouldn't always force it. I think it's good to have breaks, and as much as you sometimes might think, I need to do that, I think it's good to a little bit of a break, because when you do go back and you feel fully refreshed, then your sort of creative brain's kind of back on it again.
Yeah, that's right. It's like the gym. You got to have a rest day every now and again.
Yeah.
Your body reset.
Yeah, I mean, I say it's probably quite similar, isn't it? It's like, and sometimes I think it's good to be strict with the amount of time you've got. I mean, what I found now with music is that if I've got an hour to do something, then I just get on with it, and I don't procrastinate anymore. I'm not one of these people who has the 16-bar loop of doom and you're going round and round and round and round. What I tend to do now is when I get to a point where I get stuck, I just might start doing some arranging or doing something else. And actually, I can kind of do songs pretty quickly now because I kind of know not to get stuck in points. And then sometimes, you might be mixing stuff as you're making it, and you kind of get a bit more kind of stuck on your mix. Whereas now it's just write the song, get it all laid out, and then worry about mixing it afterwards. So it's just sort of teaching your brain ways of being more proactive and not getting stuck in areas which you don't need to be.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, Phil, thanks for this. It's been awesome to catch up. We're just going to hang around and do a little bit more for the members, but for now, thanks for your 32 years of service or whatever it's been now.
Well, thanks very much thanks for having me, because we only spoke about this a few days ago, didn't we? So it kind of worked out quite well that
all a bit last minute.
Super sub came on. We won't mention he didn't do it, but
no, we'll keep that quiet. But he'll be on next month. No worries. But yeah, thanks again, Phil, and I'll see you in about 2 minutes.
Yep.
Cheers, Matt.
Cheers. Thanks very much for having me.
You were listening to Hard House History with Paul Glazby.